Remember to support us by subscribing and sharing, but also signing up at Cricket8.com, where live scorecards cover 8,000 matches a year with advanced visual details that tell you who is actually in front in the game. Welcome to Cricket 8. I'm Jarrod Kimber. With me is the Rooster, Rob Barron. And to be honest, I wasn't supposed to be hosting this. This was supposed to be Mega, and I thought Rob was on holiday. But apparently a test match finished today, and Mega is unavailable, so I'm slipping in. Can you tell me, Rob, how a team who, in the first innings of a test match, the opening batter made 86 off 79 balls, and the first drop made 154 off 156, managed to lose the test match by 8 wickets? And hello.
It was deplorable. The effort from England, deplorable, because they went into a test match, and yes, they've won. They've beaten what's been put in front of them this summer at home. Right, they're fine. But they went into this test match with an air of, I don't know whether you can call it arrogance, an air of like, we're going to win anyway sort of thing. And they kind of went in on paper with a really rubbish bowling attack on paper. And so therefore the batsmen have to behave themselves, at least behave themselves, and not do stupid stuff. And England were incredibly lucky to be 190 for 2 in this test match because Sri Lanka had brilliant bowling conditions and they gave them away. So this was a test match that until England really decided they didn't want to win, neither side wanted to win. Sri Lanka bowled abominably on day 1 and some of day 2. They had all the conditions in their favour and they couldn't land it. They were bowling both sides of the wicket over and over again, and England were like, well, this is easy. We'll come on to Dan Lawrence in a minute. But basically, all of them got out doing something stupid. All of them. And England's run line was up to 475 at one point, and maybe even north of 475. And everybody just thought, this is easy. And my thinking was, Sri Lanka can't keep being this bad. But it wasn't good Sri Lankan bowling that got anybody out in the first innings. All of them, and I include all of them in this, nobody doesn't have blood on their hands here, played stupid shots and got caught doing something that you shouldn't do in a test match when you're trying to build a first innings score. So England got 325 when, even if they just played a tiny bit sensibly, they'd have got 100 more than that. Just a little bit more sensibly. Pope, stupid shot. Root, stupid shot. Brooks, stupid. I mean, Brooks' innings, what the hell is that in a test match? He was literally moaning that they were bowling wide to him. They were bowling 6 stump, and he was like getting exasperated after 10 minutes of a test match in the first innings. 10 minutes. He was too pissed off to carry on, and he was moaning at the umpires saying they keep bowling wide outside off stump. And he was, at one point, the stump might picked it up. He said, right, I'm going to stand here then, as if Sri Lanka were doing some sort of disgraceful body line or leg side nonsense, right? They were just bowling a bit wide, waiting for him to take the bait, which he duly took.
Do you remember that famous test match where someone picks out their off stump and goes and knocks it in about 4 foot wide? Have you ever seen that? It occasionally goes viral, that clip. Yeah, I remember when I didn't see the Harry Brook thing live, but I saw some people talking about it. It did remind me a little bit of that. I'm just like, they're allowed to bowl wide. Like, it's allowed to frustrate you as well, but like, that's batting?
It's a legitimate tactic to bowl wide, and they basically, he's strong in other areas, and he gets very impatient if he's not getting bat on ball a lot. He hates the leave, Harry Brook. He likes to feel the ball on his bat. And it was only 10 minutes, though. It wasn't an hour and a half. It wasn't a session and a half of frustrating him. It was 10 minutes. How long did he bat for? 39 balls. Pathetic. And they just put a man there, and he duly smashed it. You know, the brilliant bit of Bob Willis commentary where, you know, the mouse goes in, the mouse gets the cheese, down comes the trap, off comes his head. It was really, really simple, that dismissal. And in that first innings, England kind of went, well, we've got past 250. That's enough. Forgetting that they haven't got any bowlers, right? It wasn't like you got Anderson and Broad to look after you. It's a new bowling attack with, 3/4 of a Chris Wokes in it. A spinner that the new captain doesn't trust. Bashir is a much worse player when Ben Stokes isn't his captain. So that was horrible. So England let Sri Lanka in the test match. And then you could say, well, fine, all they have to do is, behave a bit. Sri Lanka then capitulated a bit, and then the players that are actually good this series dug them out of it. Kamindu is clearly the business. He's a problem.
Well, they were 93 for 5, chasing 325 or something, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly that. And everybody thought.
What
well,
were the
England
odds
will
then?
just
Do you remember
find-
what the market was saying?
I think England got shorter than. I mean, Winviz had already paid out England as winners and given them all medals, but it was something like 1.18 England, maybe even a bit shorter than that. I know Sri Lanka were double figures. I know they were 10-1 plus, and the draw was probably out of it by then. So maybe England were even 1.1 shorter. And at that point, when they're 90 odd for 5 and England have made 320, it's like, well, England have done enough here, and England are much better than Sri Lanka. But if you look at the names in that England bowling lineup, who are you thinking? I know Gus Atkinson gets 5 wickets every time he bowls, but he didn't actually this time, and he didn't score loads of runs either. He looked like, the cricketer that we thought Gus Atkinson was a month ago, who's now being rested from all the white ball stuff, which is his better formats. So well done, England. So yeah, look, Josh Hull. He did get 3 wickets in the first innings. I'm not quite sure how a couple of the shots that he got.
Went at 5 and over too.
Yeah, and he dropped as bad a drop as you will ever see. That really was horrific. And
He also, if you remember, he also bowled 2 wides.
Yeah, it was.
It's not easy to bowl a wide in Test cricket, Rob Barron.
No, he was also. We were told that they were picking this guy because he bowls 90 miles an hour. He was bowling 82. Loads of people can bowl 82 miles an hour. There's a very big difference between 82 miles an hour and 90 miles an hour. I'm not blaming the guy, and maybe there is something about him, and maybe he will be brilliant in 5 years' time. But he is not a Test match bowler right now. In the second innings, when England capitulated again, and if it wasn't for Jamie Smith's sort of swashbuckling rearguard of 67 or 50 or whatever it was, that would have been game over in that innings. Again, I mean, I kind of get it with Lawrence. He was thrown a very difficult task this series of, can you just become a Test match opener, please? You're our spare bat, and the opener's injured, so you're going to open. And he couldn't say, well, I'm not an opener, I don't want to play. He's going to do it. But he hadn't scored a run all series, so he came out and, again, in a Test match, when you're under it, and just tried to smash everything for 6. And he hit one of them for 6, and he was like, well, I'll just do that every ball. And then he nicked the next one off, and bye-bye. And okay, that's another one gone. Anyone going to behave themselves? Pope got bowled again. I know he chopped on, but he bowled himself. That's a huge issue for him. It used to be balls that are going to hit the stumps, and now it's balls that aren't going to hit the stumps, that he's whacking onto his own stumps. So he's got issues there. I know he got 150 in the first innings. Again, he didn't have to get out in the first innings. He didn't have to throw his wicket away. He could have stayed there and made sure England got another 60. But then the second innings, you'd think that 220 odd on a wearing pitch might be a bit difficult for a side like Sri Lanka, who are not. And Sri Lanka just came out and smashed it. That was a total cakewalk, that chase. And I think Bashir bowled 3 overs, so Pope wouldn't give him the ball and didn't trust him. So if you can't bowl in the second innings when you're defending 220 in the 4th innings of a Test match, no point picking a spinner because he's not there for his batting or his fielding, is he? Loads of nonsense from England all the way through. But to take a Test match as unseriously as England took that Test match is a disgrace. And they turned up thinking they were going to win anyway, and not a single one of them applied themselves. And there's lots, like almost all of them are to blame, but the bowling isn't very good. I thought Stone was okay in the Test match. He looked quite threatening. But both sides had excellent bowling conditions and threw them away. And let's not forget, the funniest thing about this Test match was the bit when there was bad light. Now, if you're trying to win that Test match and you're England, and the umpires say to you, you are not allowed to bowl any pace here. So England have Bashir and Root. And Sri Lanka had 2 set batsmen who were just taking singles off every ball with absolutely no danger. If you are taking the Test match seriously, if you're trying to win it, and the light's like that, you go, okay, we can't bowl any pace, we're walking off. Sorry everyone that's here.
No, you don't. That's stupid. You say, what if Chris Woakes could bowl off spin?
And then we saw the best thing that's happened in the English Test summer, which is Chris Woakes bowling off spin. And that, I mean, it wasn't as bad as me, but it was a bit like watching someone like me trying to bowl off spin.
There's a moment there. I'm just going to cut in, just in case there's an issue with your microphone. If you can aim it slightly more towards your mouth, I think.
We can do this.
Oh, there we go. It was coming through loud and clear for me, but I could see someone complaining in the comments. But
sorry.
Interesting. What I found really interesting about that was that England just start laughing Now, what stage was the game in at that point? Like, what was? Do you remember when the Chris Woakes off spin was? I'm trying to remember back.
Yeah, it was kind of in the sort of mid-afternoon when Dhananjaya and Kamindu were putting their partnership together. So it was like they turned the 93 for 5 into sort of 150 for 5. And then England gave Sri Lanka another 80 runs instead of going in.
Because there was a short ball that he bowled that was just pulled around the corner at one stage. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, why does this need to happen? And he bowled a short wide one, which I think was left. and Joe Root's laughing at it. And I was like, why is this funny? like I get it. Like, you guys want to have fun playing cricket now. And look, I think we're all on board with that at some stage of the different elements and everything else. But there is also an element of like, just it's a test match and you're trying to win it. Like, how is this trying to win a test match? Because it feels like Chris Woakes bowling off spin is the opposite of that, right? It feels like the game is going to be drawn and no one gives it's so hard to say it without swearing, isn't it? But the whole thing is just so bizarre to me that it becomes like funny. And look, I get it. We've all seen some weird stuff and we've seen this sort of stuff before. But it's like I don't understand the thought process behind, as you said, thinking that that's the best option. Like, just go off, wait for the light. And do you remember how many balls it was?
Was it 4?
It was 4 balls, and then the light, which also meant that the funniest commentary I've ever heard in my life was Mike Atherton going, I can't believe the light would have changed in 4 balls. Doesn't he understand how clouds work?
Clouds, yeah.
I remember once when Athers told that story. I remember once playing in a football game, and I said it was a really hard football game because at one end the cloud came over, and so it was pouring at one end and it was dry at the other end. So you'd be playing on dry and running around on dry, and suddenly the ball would come down and it was soggy wet. And if you ran into the other end, suddenly it was pouring on you. Like, you could feel the difference. It was so weird. And this woman saying to me, well, that couldn't be possible. And I was like, well, that's how clouds work. Do you not understand? And you're listening to Athers going, do you not understand that sometimes clouds open and break and don't cover the whole thing? Anyway, it just felt like, again, there was that element of we're playing this for entertainment, not for Test cricket.
Yeah, and well, that's exactly what it was. But it was almost like we're having a laugh, so it's fine. And this comes back to the whole McCullum-Stokes thing. It's like the results don't really matter as long as we're having fun. And so it cut to the dugout, or whatever you call it. It cut to the balcony, and Stokes is standing up and laughing his head off. Collingwood is laughing his head off. Stokes is walking around going, I can't believe this is happening. There's no need to give 2 set good batsmen 50 runs for free in a test match when you've already chucked 100 runs away in the first innings. You're just handing, and like, as much as I am all for having fun, like, there wasn't enough fun in English cricket for a while. All the fun came from us doing stupid stuff. But I'm all for having fun. But you have to go back to trying to give yourself the best percentage chance of winning the match. I say this all the time. That's what you're meant to do. And when you've got people that you're charging over £100 to go and watch, they don't want to see you deliberately trying not to win. That was what they were doing. They go, oh, sod it. Well, let's just do this for a bit and it'll be funny. That's basically what happened. And if we're playing in a game on a Sunday and there's 9 people watching, you're allowed. You're allowed to go, well, let's do this because it'll be funny. Let this guy bowl. Or let's set this ridiculous field and see what happens, because it's funny and you're there to enjoy yourselves. But when you're charging people over £100 to go and watch, and you're saying, as England's cricket team now, we actually got some players that are good enough. We are better than, on paper, theoretically, we're better than Sri Lanka if we're playing in our home conditions. We're better than the West Indies if we're in our home conditions. Let's not forget we had 30 years where everyone was better than us. So to now get to the stage where we're actually competent at cricket and deliberately do bad stuff, that's unacceptable, because you're supposed to try and win the games.
Counterpoint. What if that was a live Mythbusters to see if Chris Woakes could in fact do everything? And it was complete. Could I throw some other things at you?
Yeah.
England's batting looks really good when Joe Root makes like 150 runs per innings. it doesn't look as good. Like we've talked about Jasprit Bumrah a lot in India, right? Like Jasprit Bumrah in the limited over side basically papers over any other cracks in that side. As good as we both think the overall team is, Jasprit Bumrah just takes it to a level or it doesn't matter. You watch that England play and you're like, oh, Bazball. Essentially, it still feels like Root either makes runs or they lose games.
Yeah. He's fortunately he averages north of 50, but when he goes fail, and his innings in the first innings was 13 or 50 or something, and just a dreadful shot to get out. It's hard to dig the guy out who's the only one that ever scores any runs. But that's when Root fails, you need someone else to go, all right, I'll do it, rather than, oh, Root's failed, so we're dead. And Stokes does that sometimes when Root messes it up. Stokes goes, all right, I'll just bat normally for a bit to try and get us back in the game. But no one did that. They just all slogged out. But look at the dismissals, and everybody got caught either on the rope or in the ring playing stupid shots. And that isn't Test match cricket. It's not even, I don't like Bazball as a term, but it's not even that. They were just pathetic. They were just like, oh, well, that's not really there to hit, but I'll have a half-hearted waft. Like, if you're going to do it, whack it. Smash the hell out of it. It wasn't like they're all scoring. The strike rates of that middle order, 27, 48, 51, 50, 41. That's not Bazball, is it? That's just being rubbish. That's because the ball's been bowled 4 inches outside of stump. So how are you supposed to reach it, Rob, to play those shots?
I want to talk about Dan Lawrence for a minute. Dan Lawrence was brought in because he was the second best player of spin in England outside of Joe Root. The whole idea was, do you remember he made his debut, didn't he, in Sri Lanka? Or certainly that was when he was brought into the side as a specialist, and he was going to play really well against spin and everything else. My question to you, Rob, is like, why is he suddenly an opener? And it just feels like, it goes back to what you were saying before. We get it. They're trying to push the envelope and they're coming up with things that may not quite work. But at the same time, what's the advantage they get there? They're going to, let's say Dan Lawrence is an opener who can average 34 with a bat. How does that help them in the future anyway? Like, I don't understand the thought process there.
It's baffling. I think they literally said, right, it's Dan Lawrence. He's our spare batsman. So if the number 7 goes down, he's number 7. If the number 4 goes down, he's number 4. And if it's an opener, then he'll have a go at opening. And that's not really fair to a guy that's opened for 3 innings out of his 200 in first class. He averages mid-30s, 36 or something in first class cricket, which is not knocking the door down. His bowling action is very funny. That should go in his favour.
Probably worth him being picked, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really funny. It's several frogs in several blenders rather than just one, but it's really funny. It's okay. He turned it a lot more than Bashir did. But that shouldn't get him in the team, even though it's funny. We've got to stop doing things just because they're funny in England. And his batting kind of went how you would expect it to. He's limited. I've seen him whack it everywhere on good pitches against bad bowlers with a nice hard ball. I've seen that, and he's very competent at doing that. He had an absolutely horrendous 100, like really bad. I know that you can't pick or not pick people for test matches based on a nonsensical, stupid format. But he wasn't in any kind of form, and they went, right, open the batting in a test match in England. Now, opening the batting in England is really hard. That's the time where it is tough. And Duckett appears to have sort of worked it out as in doing the job that his side wants him to do, which is quick 50s. It used to be that you wanted somebody to get the shine off the ball and anchor the innings and all that, but that's gone. Okay, fine. He probably needs to learn how to get from 70 to 100 a bit better, that kind of thing. But yeah, Lawrence kind of did what was expected, and it was almost sad to see him come out and just go, right, I can't do this, so I'm just going to slog every ball, and let's see what happens.
Can you do me a favor? Again, your microphone is pointing up your nostrils when it should be aiming at your mouth, so point it down at your big, beautiful mouth.
Tiny mouth.
It is quite tiny, your mouth.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it feels the whole thing feels a little bit confusing. The other thing is that they've gone from having what I would call a very defensive-minded bowling lineup with funky fields, so Ollie Robinson and Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson and these sorts of guys, to Mark Wood and Josh Hull and Gus Atkinson and everyone else. There's an argument that you and I could make for trying to round those bowlers out and get them ready for playing in places like South Africa and West Indies and Australia and maybe even the subcontinent, getting this experience under them. But when I went back on MV Play and I watched a fair bit of Josh Hull's balls, and what I saw was someone who's not ready for Test cricket. Like, there's no rounding him out. He's just not ready. They just wanted to play him.
Yeah. Unequivocally as well. Like, he got more wickets in this game than he has in first-class cricket this year. And that's embarrassing because he got 3. And he didn't look like the real deal. He didn't bowl very fast. He didn't do much with it. And a lot of England bowlers bowled bad balls in this Test match. And so did the Sri Lankan bowlers. But this guy, and he is only 20, but it's not his fault. He's not going to say, no, I'm not going to play, is he? Not going to say, no, thanks. I don't want a Test cap. And yeah, Flintoff's speech was great when he gave him the cap, and it was a nice moment for his family. But then it felt a bit like, when he dropped the catch, you thought maybe he never does anything ever again in a cricket match. Like, that's the end of him. He came back quite well there. Like, he showed a bit of character. But some of the wide filth, the kind of wide, long hops that just got dispatched. And the chase of 220 in the 4th innings was so easy. It wasn't like England were a couple of chances away from making a game of it.
Yeah.
England didn't even make a game of it. England got stuffed. England got absolutely battered in this Test match. And they couldn't really throw the ball to anybody.
No.
Like, Stone looked quite good in spells, but I have big question marks on how fit that guy can be for a long period of time. And I know all English people just talk about the Ashes all the time, but that's not looking very good, is it?
Well, you wouldn't want
bowling attack is going
to. You wouldn't want to take this attack. I mean, you look at Nasim Pasanka, who obviously played. Nasim Pasanka. Sorry, I'll get it right. No, I've got it wrong 3 different times. I'll get it. It's worse than your microphone. Me trying to say this name, but you look at Nasanka and you think to yourself, that's a very good player approaching his peak. But he looked like he was playing baseball against the England bowlers out there, right? What the fuck is going to happen when they have to bowl to Travis Head on a flat pitch? Like, that wasn't even a flat pitch. What happens when the ball gets soft and, Mitch Marsh swings his big butt out there, right? Like, they've got some real issues if that is the attack that they're going to be going up with, right? And you look at that and you're like, oh, we're going to try this, we're going to try that and everything else. They're missing the bowl that you throw the ball to. And you remember during their first baseball summer, when one of their great tactics was essentially hitting guys out of the attack until where the captain just felt comfortable giving it just to Trent Bolt or whoever the bowler was over and over again, right? There's like one bowler on the opposition that they wouldn't completely annihilate, and the captain just happened to keep bowling them. And I thought, that's such a brilliant tactic. And then I was watching them bowl, and I was like, it's like they've decided that that's the best method of not having anyone you can trust with the ball. And a lot of this is just, and I'm just going to go out there, but if you take a bowler with 700 wickets away, there is an element of no one else. Like, how could you trust anyone else?
Yeah, well, they don't. And they've sort of gone, I mean, what if they end up picking Wokes away again? Because he's rubbish away, like really rubbish. And he did okay in this series, like just about okay. And they might have to go, well, at least he's fit. I know he's a really nice guy. But, I mean, England are hugely struggling. I don't know what prices are out there for the Ashes, but Australia are overwhelming favourites because they have a proper team. They all know what they're meant to do. And one thing Australia will not do, like, let's not forget, for 2 days of this 3.5-day Test match, Sri Lanka didn't play very well. Mm. Australia will not let England off the hook. If England give, as happened in the second Test, that England, the stupid declarations and stuff, England could have easily won. Australia go, well, you're going to give us a chance to win a Test match. We'll take it, thank you. And they'll just batter you. Imagine the scoreline if England played like that against Australia there. I dread to think what would have happened, because Sri Lanka bowled badly to let England get some runs in the first innings. England did their absolute, on another day, that's 50 all out, that deplorable effort from England.
Yeah.
And Australia go, well, what, you're going to let us face Chris Wokes and nonsense when we're both set? They're scoring at 15 and over if that happens. They're not just plodding it around. England will get destroyed in Australia if they turn up with that attitude and that bowling attack, because it doesn't really look like a bowling attack, and the batting ain't all that either. Yeah, like Crawley got himself back into it last summer, but he failed for a year and a half before that. Is he going to come back and be brilliant? Don't know. Duckett seems absolutely fine, but I'm not sure Australia is the best place to see the best of Ben Duckett. He seems to have worked. He's got so much better against spin in the last, from his first effort in Test matches where he just turned up against Bangladesh and got bowled for 7 every single game. He's all right now against spin. He's fine, but he's not going to get spin in Australia. He's going to get Lyon probing on a proper length, no loose balls, and he's going to get bombed. I don't like England's chances at all in the Ashes, but they've got a lot of questions again. They say you go on about transition, but what's worse here is if you take Joe Root out, the batting looks dead and the bowling looks dead anyway. So now what happens? What's the answer?
I mean, I completely agree. So England are rooted. I think Rob Barron has made his case there. Talk about Sri Lanka. I didn't want to talk about them too much in this one because it is a dead rubber, right? And, they play some good cricket at times in here. It was still a weird test match. But it is worth talking about Nissanka. So he's 26 now. This was his, 10th, 11th test match? I think he's averaging mid-40s with the bat at the moment. ODI cricket, he's averaging about the same. Not really a T20 player. Someone asked me about his ceiling on one of my other podcasts, and I was thinking, I don't think it's like to be one of the best players in the world, but you look at his age and you think, well, he should be hitting his prime in the next couple of years. He's a fantastic player, of what kind of level he could be at, I don't know, but he has the chance of being at the very least Sri Lanka's best bat. Not that that's the highest mountain to climb at the moment, but
well, Sri Lanka have got some good test bats. Like Chandimal was the best bat in the world last year in test match, or 18 months ago.
He also had about 3 years where you were batting with a Chandimal mask on.
True. When he dropped himself from the T20 side, that sort of era of Chandimal. But he averages about 40 in most things, and he averages 28 in T20s. He's not a T20 player, but Sri Lanka keep trying to make him be one.
They seem to feel that way with a lot of their batters, right? It's like, if we just keep picking these guys, they're eventually going to like this.
Yeah, and it's not right. He doesn't have the guns for T20 at all.
Do you know what his average is in T20?
Is it in T20Is? I think it's 28. I don't know what it is in normal stuff.
No. In T20s, it's almost 30. In T20Is, it's 19.6.
Is it?
It's actually hard to have an average that low if you're that kind of player.
At a strike rate that's sub 120.
103 strike rate.
Okay, that's rubbish.
He might be the worst T20 international player from a major team. Anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack you there. What you're about to say is that Chandimal can bat and Kusal Mendes can bat, but Nissanka looks like someone who can go to the next level.
He's
at
got
this stage.
Speak to Mark Machado about him. He's always raving about Nissanka. He absolutely loves him. He was there watching him in the nets the other day when I was at Old Trafford. His 4-hitting ability is very good. If he tries to turn himself into somebody that's going to get franchise gigs by smoking 60s, it ain't going to happen. He'll go downhill quite quickly. But he looks like a very good bat. And he can go long as well. He's got a double 100 in ODI, hasn't he? He can.
Yeah, he's got a double 100.
So he can bat long. He's only 26. Maybe we see. I think there was some quite big positives for Sri Lanka to take out of this series. Yes, they won a test match that England buggered about in, but Kamindu looked very, very good, composed as much as anything else, which is quite good to see from someone that's only had about 10 test matches or 6 test matches, whatever it is. They've got guys that can bat in test matches. Fernando looked very good in spells. And they did it without Jayasuriya, who looks like a guy that can, if conditions suit, you can just plug him in at one end and he'll be absolutely fine. His home record is way better than his away record, as often happens with subcontinent spinners. But he looked fine as well. They didn't even need to pick him in this one. There's some encouraging stuff there for Sri Lanka. And it felt a bit like at the start of the summer when they got battered and they got repeatedly Gus Atkinson, which they'll probably be the only team where that ever happens, where they just get absolutely Atkinsoned all over the place with bat and ball. You felt a bit for them. You think, well, they're not going to get anything out of this and it's all very disappointing. But for them to they didn't just win this Test match; they obliterated England in this Test match, having been staring down the barrel of 500 in the first innings, and then won by an easy 8 wickets. And they could have chased another 200 if they felt like it. Yeah, stunner of an effort from Sri Lanka, and they have stuff to build on, which is good for them.
A couple of questions to finish up. Sid, wait, let me put Sid on. Sid asks, are all chances of England making it to the World Test Championship finals gone? I know mathematically it might not be possible. It might be possible, but realistically, I don't even have them in my shortlist at the moment. I don't think they're anywhere near it. And then POG says, Sri Lanka has produced so many talented cricketers, but lack discipline or not reaching their full potential, as Kusal Mendes, an example. Kusal Mendes is, I'm just going to have a look now, but Kusal Mendes is someone who, over the last couple of years, has actually started to make a lot of runs. He's 29 now. In Test cricket, he's averaged 36.5. But the last couple of years, he's actually, certainly in white ball cricket, he started to look a little bit better. And last year, in 6 Test matches, he averaged 58. So we actually have started to see some of that come through. I'm not sure I blame all of Sri Lanka's issues on Kusal Mendes. They have a terrible cricket board. They've had all sorts of issues at home when it comes to boards and everything else. But they've certainly, I think over the last couple of years, they played, well, way better cricket than I would have thought that they would have. They were in contention of the last World Test Championship final, and there's no way that any of us ever thought that that was even slightly a possibility. So I think, again, they've done okay, but they'll be happy with this in this situation. Rob, being that your microphone absolutely hates you,
Sure does.
more than your wife does. Oh, you finally found a way to put it in your
How about
mouth.
that? I just have to shove it in my mouth. Just to finish on Sri Lanka briefly, they the T20 side has a genuinely world-class bowling attack and no batsmen. And the Test side looks like it's got quite a good batting lineup and not many bowlers. They just need to find one where they can get bowlers and batsmen playing for the same team at the same time, and stop trying to make Test guys play T20s. Let Rajapaksa have a go, and let more people that gun it everywhere have a go in the T20s. And that bowling attack, if they can do anything with the bat in T20s, Sri Lanka are going to rise again, like quite soon. Their bowling attack in T20s is absolutely brilliant.
Well, I'd like to say that was the sexiest you've ever sounded. I didn't realize you could do. I didn't realize you could do AMSR, but apparently you can. A big shout out to everyone. We didn't have any producers on today, so we did have a few more issues with Rob's microphone, but I'm sure we'll fix it going ahead in the future. Anyway, but thank you to everyone who stayed on. I am Jarrod Kimber. That is Rob Barron. And this has been another Cricket8 podcast. Remember, you can find all the stuff we do over at cricket8.com. We've actually got I don't know what you would call it, but like a competition at the moment where you could spin a wheel, and the more time you spin a wheel, you can win prizes and all sorts of things. It looks like Rob's just unplugging himself right at the moment. But go over to cricket8.com. We'll continue with podcasts. We're slowing down for a little while. Obviously, we're still a startup and we're looking for funding. So we'll be doing slightly less shows coming up in the meanwhile. But we've got a few more lined up for this week, as long as Rob Barron can actually find his microphone at all. Do you know what's funny about all this, Rob, is I basically had non-stop microphone problems for about 3 weeks, and we fixed mine today. And it seems like in fixing mine, we've shoved yours right up your butt.
Yeah, I'll just hold it like this forever. That's fine. And this probably doesn't work that well if you're only listening and you can't see that I'm mucking about with a broken mic. Anyway, it's been emotional and lots of fun, and we'll see you next time.
Remember to support us by subscribing and sharing, but also signing up at cricket8.com, where live scorecards cover 8,000 matches a year with advanced